and just covering the topic of dealing with, helping children deal with difficult emotions. Now we might just wait for people to hop on, but while we wait, it's an interesting topic, isn't it? I am quite experienced with kids. I just love children. I've been working in schools for over 30 years, and I'm a mother of 2 and a grandmother of 5. And I find it actually, it's getting easier and easier, especially being a grandma, because having had the experience with so many children, I can see that all those behaviors and all those things that we deal with our children are very, very normal. And also seeing that some periods in their lives is just a phase. They come and go. And as parents, we're often worried that we got to teach them the right way, and then we get all caught up in that as well. So as a grandparent, I find it so much easier. And I'd like to share some of the things that I've learned along the way and a technique that I love using. So I'm not sure if you've been dealing with more issues lately, if you've been cooped up at home a lot with this virus and being in lockdown. I guess that can sort of play on everybody's patience level, I guess, or with the interactions, we have to learn how to deal with each other. So it might have been a bit more heightened than usual, but interestingly enough too, what I hear is that it's bringing families closer together as well. We sort of learn so much from each other, which is a beautiful thing. Okay. So hopefully everyone is here that wants to watch this, and we'll get started. So we'll be talking about feelings. Feelings that come in an array of, there's such a vast variety of emotions. But what we see mainly is the behavior, the reaction to the feelings that we have. So we'll be looking into that. I'll be talking about how we can deal with our own emotions first and how that can help our children as well, not just by modeling it, but by also keeping our own calm. And that way we can be so much more helpful, but I get into that a bit more. I'll have some tips on how we can help children calm their heightened emotions, and also some problem-solving skills of what we can do when we deal with emotions or specific behaviors. So I hope you enjoy this. And at the end of the session, there is time for questions, I hope. And if I don't get to your question or you have some more, I'll put my email at the end of it. And you're more than welcome to email me if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Okay, so let's get started. Helping children deal with difficult emotions. Now, when we see our children with difficult emotions, it often touches us deeply. We want to be there and help. Feelings aren't good or bad, they just are. And it's like, to me, when we get into the emotions, it's a sign of what our need is. There's something that's missing and we react to that. Now, babies do that when they're hungry. They look after their immediate needs. So when we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's the psychological need that needs to be looked after first. So babies let you know when they're hungry, when they are thirsty, when they're not warm enough. There's safety too. If they feel that that you're not around, they let you know. They want to feel safe. And it's the same for children as well. So all those feelings that we have, they are a sign that one of those needs isn't met. And the interesting thing too is my daughter has a set of twins, and even though they're twins, they're very different in their personality. And when she dealt with any issues, when she noticed that feelings were coming up and emotions are heightened, one of them really, when she got grumpy, she knew, first thing she checked was, oh, are you hungry? And most often or not, that was the case. So to look after the immediate, the physiological need first is a good start when you're dealing with children's emotions. So most of the time when this one woke up in the morning, she could be very grouchy. But as soon as she had breakfast, all that changed. So having breakfast first, she'd send them, go and have something to eat, and then, things looked so much brighter. Sleep is another one. So if children don't get enough sleep, the same for us, we mightn't be at our best, and our emotions are sort of on the edge so much more. So looking after those things, it's really interesting to look at when there is a behavior. What does that mean? What need is not being met? So looking at it from this point of view is a really great start when you're dealing with children's issues. And we've got such an array of feelings and emotions. Now, if I look at this one, it's like we often just mention, we're sad or angry or happy, or the basic ones that we talk about. But there are so many nuances of emotions and feelings. Now, children are very much in the emotional state. Their frontal lobe is not really developed all that much yet. Their thinking brain is still developing. So they really act from the emotional state, the emotional brain. And it's a nice idea to make them aware of their feelings, of what's going on with their feelings, where they might feel it in their body, because often they just react and then not really aware of what's happening inside them. So to get them in touch with that feeling is step number one, because once they become more aware of it, then they can also learn, well, what can I do to care for that feeling? Now, as young children, they mightn't be into all those different words, but the older the children get, it's a really good idea to give them that emotional literacy, to get them to describe what it is, to become aware of, well, what is it that I'm feeling right now? And how come I feel that way? Because once we make that connection, we can then get more into the problem solving of things. Well, what can I do when I feel like that? So with older kids, it's a really nice idea too, to maybe look at one of those feelings and choose one of the feelings one a day or something, or when you sit around. Have you ever felt gloomy? When was a time that you felt gloomy? You might share different stories of when you were gloomy. How long did it last? The important thing too is for children to become aware of that feelings don't last forever. They come and go. It's called emotion. They are in motion. They come in and they go. And with children, often much faster than maybe with us adults. They can be angry and mad with their brother at 1 minute, and the next minute you can see them playing together and having great fun. So they move on very quickly, often. So to get them used to looking at what different emotions they have and that they're normal. When we talk about that, we feel like that too, it normalizes it for them, that we all have them and it's okay. They're not good, they're not bad, they just are. And just the more that we talk about them, the easier it is to deal with them as well. Now, my grandsons helped me to show you something that I use a lot with my work with children, where I draw a body map with kids, and I haven't had any kid yet that didn't enjoy that activity. And no matter what age, I do it with teenagers as well. So I'll just get into that right now, and you can see what's happening here. So you can see we can use this for many things, just discussions of what goes on in their life. I would have continued that conversation with Luca a bit more of what happened and what he might have been able to do, or what did he do and how did it work out. And just to get into those conversations to help them work through it. And maybe next time they can try something that works for them. The thing to remember when we deal with children's emotions is one very, very important thing that I can't stress enough. It's like, you know, when you fly and the flight attendant talks about the oxygen masks, how the parent has to put the oxygen mask on themselves first before they put it on their child. So before we deal with their feelings, it's very, very important that we deal with our own emotions first. It's important to look at who has the problem. Like when we see our children distressed with difficult emotions, I don't know any parent that wouldn't react in some way to that. It can affect us. It can remind us how we might have been feeling when we were a child. Things might be coming up. It might be, we might feel helpless that we can't do things for them to make it better. There's all different emotions coming up, and it's really important to look at whose problem is it really. Sometimes we react when they keep having fights with their siblings, and then we get involved because we sort of don't like seeing the other one upset, or there is a big mess and the kids get grumpy because they don't want to clean up and things like that. So it's really important to look at whose problem is it? Am I dealing with my emotions or the child's emotions? That was a very important factor for me to learn, and I learned that along the way when my children were growing up. And it helped me so much in my parenting because it let me know when I needed to be there for my children to help them, to teach them how to problem solve and make them more resilient, and give them the skills that they can learn themselves of how to deal with those different situations. And also to look at, what am I feeling right now? Why is it a problem for me? And is it really a big problem? So looking at our own emotions first and dealing with them is the most important part. Now we can do that right there in the situation where we're at, or we can remove ourselves and just take a big breath in and just deal with what's going on in here. My favorite tool is EFT, which is called tapping. It helps our emotional, it helps us to calm down our emotions. And I'd like to start with that first, and would love for you to join in. So before we do anything, it's like we stop and look and listen first. And if we can help it not to react, because, and that's easily said sometimes, and we've all done it, that we sort of blow up and here we go and have a rant and a rage. But if we can help ourselves just to think of the traffic light and stop first and don't react, say nothing and just observe. The interesting thing too is when siblings are at each other, they have a very good knack of drawing you into their thing, and we often don't see the full picture and know the full story. So when we try and solve their problem, inevitably we make a decision, or we blame somebody and we don't even know what really happened. So one always feels unfairly treated, and the problem often gets bigger or not resolved in the best way. So the first thing would be to stop and listen. And I love that one too. Your ears will never get you in trouble. And I'm still practicing that one, that I don't start talking first and just listen. But the main thing to listen for is, how does it affect me? What's going on right now and how is it affecting me? And to tune into that. And tapping is a beautiful way to do that. So, oops, hang on, where were we here? So this is the tapping process. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar, if you've seen my other video. We tune into our issue first, into our feeling that we have. How do we know that we have that issue? Do I feel it somewhere in my body? And then we rate it. How big is that feeling right now that I have? Out of 10, if 0, it's not there at all, and 10 is as big as it gets, how big is it right now? Now, this is also a process that I use with children when they've got really heightened emotions. So with kids, I don't necessarily ask them to give me a number. I'll let them show me, how big is your feeling right now? If it is as big as it can get, it would be this big. And if it's not that big, it would be this. And if it's not there at all, it's this big. I let them show me how big that feeling is right now, because that gives us a set point of where we're at right now. And then we start with a setup statement. Even though I've got this feeling, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And we say that 3 times while we tap on this part of the hand. And the beauty about that is, because often when we feel something, we give ourselves such a hard time for feeling it, and we push that feeling down and we want it to go away. But accepting it is a really important part of it. Yes, we feel it, and it's okay to feel that way, because anybody else in my situation would probably feel exactly the same. So to just become aware, this is how it is, it's a fact, and I accept myself anyway. And then we tap along all these points. And then at the end of it, we tune back into the feeling again. So you can see the first point is here on the side of the hand. Then we go to where the eyebrow starts, then the side of the eye, then under the eye, under the nose, under the chin, and then underneath your collarbone, there is a little notch down on the chest, and then under the arm, about where a bra strap might be, and the last point on top of the head. So if you're ready, you might want to join in and we do a round of tapping. Let me just stop sharing that for a minute. Here we go. Okay, I'd like you to tune into a feeling when you think of your child having a difficult emotion that they're dealing with. Let's say you're dropping them off at school and they're really clingy and they don't want to go and they get sad when you leave. And I know any parent, to leave them behind like that, it tugs on our heartstrings, and it's really hard because we can't be there for them, and we have to leave them behind. So what might be the feeling that you have inside when you see your child in tears and you have to leave them there? Just tune into that for a moment. And if you've got a different thing that you're dealing with your child, tune into that. I'm just going to use that as an example, but the tapping will also help you with your issue. You just tune into what you're feeling with your child. What is your worry about your child? So let's have a look at that. Tune into your body. Where in your body do you feel that feeling? If it had a color, what color would it be? Has it got a shape? A texture? Is it heavy or light, that feeling? And if you had to rate it, how big is it right now when you think of that? Okay, then let's start tapping. So we start tapping here. Even though I have this worried feeling inside, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And I'd like you to say that aloud too. And we do it 2 more times. Even though I've got this worried feeling inside about my child, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I have this worried feeling inside, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And then at the eyebrow point, when I see my child upset, I get all worried. I feel helpless. These worries about my child, when I see them upset, and I feel so helpless. I'd like to take the pain away from them. These worries about my child. And then we take a big breath in. And we tune back into it again. That's 1 round of tapping. And notice what you notice. And it's a nice idea to do a few rounds of that to really bring down that feeling of worry. So we might just do another one. This worry about my child. When they get so worked up and so distressed, I worry about them. I've got this worry inside about my child. I feel so helpless. I've got this worry inside. This worry about my child. I worry about them when they're so upset. I choose to let that worry go. Then you take another big breath in. Beautiful. Now this was just a very quick demonstration of it, but you can see that when we can calm ourselves down, because often the children actually pick up on our worries, on what we feel. We might feel guilty about their behavior. What might other people think? And then whatever goes on in ourselves, it plays out and they pick up on that too, and it will have an effect on their emotions and what they do and how they react and act. So the biggest point I can ever make is tune into what's going on in here. What happens when my child feels this way or behaves that way? How does it affect me? Where do I feel it? What goes on inside of me? And deal with that first of all. Because then once you are looked after, like with that oxygen mask, and you all calm and safe, then you can give that calmness and that confidence to your children as well. You also role model a really good way of dealing with things as well, instead of when we're losing it and we, because our emotions are heightened as well and they're up there. So it's like when we're on an aeroplane and you've got a passenger next to you and they're scared as anything with flying. And if you have a person next to you that's scared as well, that's going to heighten it even more. But imagine sitting next to a person that's totally calm and relaxed, and there's nothing to worry about. And you sit next to them, it rubs off on you. It gives you that calm feeling as well. And our energies go out like that too. So the best thing you can do for your child is to care for your own feelings. Also, when you're really overwhelmed with other things that go on in your life, make sure that you take time for yourself, because you will be a much better person for your family when you do that. So that's step number 1. And then we look at I'm trying to share my screen again. Here we go. So this tapping is the most useful tool, and the beauty is we have it on at our fingertips, and it is the most successful way to de-stress, to calm your whole nervous system. And it is also very easy for children to learn, and they are quite good at it too. Kids actually that I work with, they will use it whenever they need to as well. So dealing with children's feelings. Now, we heard my grandkids say that they get scared with thunder, or monsters is a very common one for younger kids to be scared of. Now, I've got a story. When I was 5, I remember I was so scared in my bed when I heard this growling noise. And kids' imaginations are they just go wild. And even after 45 years, or how long it is, more than that, more than 50 years, I still remember that feeling like it happened today. This scared feeling of what I imagined was that I had a bear in my room, a mother bear that growled, and I didn't dare to move. I had sweaty palms, and I was shaking, and I didn't want to shake though, because I didn't want that mama bear to know that I'm in here in the bed, and I was just under my covers, and I didn't dare move or dare call my mum or anything. I was so frightened. And I thought, if I moved, she wants to protect her cubs and she'll go for me. The interesting thing was what I found out the next morning. What that growling noise was my father snoring. Now, he worked away a lot, so I didn't hear that noise every night. So when he came home and he could snore really loud, it sort of, I found out what it really was. But at the time, there is no way anybody could have told me any different. I was convinced there was a bear in my room. Now, I never saw a live bear before, and I don't know how that imagination came into my head, but that's what it was. So when children come with whatever they're feeling and whatever they think it is, it's the feeling that we deal with. We validate that feeling. When we brush it aside and trying with our logic to say, oh, that's silly, there's no bears, how would a bear come in here? The logic, neither here nor there. The scared feeling is what we look at. And that's what we're dealing with. Because what happens with our brain gets hijacked. Oops, I went back. It's our worry brain works like that. It's that fight and flight response. So in the old brain, when we perceive there is a danger, and for me it was the perceived one, which wasn't real, but I thought there was a bear in there. There was that danger, and it rings then my alarm bells. This amygdala gets fired. this red part here, which is the worry alarm. And it's like an alarm. It tells you, look out, there is danger. And it puts us into that fight and flight mode where we freeze, where we can't move, or we want to run as fast as we can, or we hide. And in that state, we can't think. Our thinking is hijacked. We flip the lid, we're not connected to our thinking brain anymore, and we're just in that state. So to calm that down, tapping is really, really useful. Another way to help as well is to talk with kids about, well, what would that feeling look like? And drawing it is a really nice way of dealing with that too, to externalize that feeling. Oh, I'm going back again. Here we go. So what does it look like? What color is it? I often ask that question. Or what shape might it be? So it doesn't have to be a person. This kid drew a Mr. Worry. And what might that worry say to you? What does that, you know, what feeling, if the feeling had a voice, what would it say? So often our worry brain tells us things and that are not really true. So we can challenge that as well. We can teach children to challenge that worry thought. Is it really true? Especially if with monsters. And it's not to tell them, oh, what a silly thing, there is no monsters, but to teach them, now check with your worry brain and tell them about the worry brain, that worry brain just wants to keep us safe. That worry brain is there for a reason. It wants us to survive. So if we think there's something dangerous, it warns us and it tells us, be careful, be careful. So we listen to it, but then we ask ourselves, is it really true? Is there anything to worry about? So we can teach them those sorts of skills as well. And also using the tapping then to overcome that feeling. So I want to share this video with you. So it's a really great way to help them to calm their emotions. And for them, they often get over it very, very quickly and move on quite easily, but it's a tool that they can use at any time. I use the toy as well. Sometimes they don't like tapping on themselves, so they don't want to do the tapping. If they don't want to do it, just leave it. Another way of doing it too is you can tap on yourself and just say, even though I can see you upset, you're still a great kid, and you tap kind of for them, but by watching you, they still get the benefits from it. What I love about EFT is that they get heard, their feelings gets validated, and they're not in trouble for it, and it's okay to feel that way because they're still a great kid even though they have that feeling. And it helps to calm it down just by talking about it and by letting it out instead of holding it inside and or rubbishing it and saying, ah, that's silly, you don't have to feel scared. Because telling them you don't have to feel scared, it doesn't help them. They have that scared feeling in there, so we have to deal with that. Another quick thing too that I wanted to share with you is this stop, think, do problem solving that Lindy Peterson has. And it's, again, the first thing that you do is you check with how you feel. So if there is things that happen between siblings, for example, or you got to make sure too, is it your problem or is it the child's problem? When it's the child's problem, you guide them through that process. And first at stop, you just look and listen. What's happening? What's going on? What do I feel? And what do other people feel right now? And what is the problem? Looking at the problem. And then at the think, you look at as many options that you have. What can you try in that situation? How can we care for that feeling? What do you need right now? What could you do to make yourself feel better? What things do you enjoy doing? If you can't play with that person right now and they want to play with somebody else, what could you do in that situation? And let them come up with as many solutions. Often we jump in so much to want to give them the answer and do it for them because we want to be so helpful. But in the end, it is disempowering them. So we want to really encourage them to come up with as many possibilities as possible, because really they have to implement them. It's got to sit right for them. So coming up with as many solutions as possible, and it doesn't matter if they're silly ones, you can chuck in some silly ones as well, and you can make suggestions, but let them make lots of them too. You can write them all down, all the different things. Often we get stuck with doing the same thing over and over, and it's not working and it's not working. So we got to broaden their mind and see what other things they can come up with. And then when we've got all these different options, we look at, well, how do you think it might work out? If you choose this, what do you think might happen? How would it make you feel if you did this? And look at another one. Well, what would happen here, do you think? So it's training that thinking brain and putting that into gear, those thinking of the consequences, which they haven't learned as yet all that much. So they really need that skill to learn that as well. And then once you looked at all the different options, you don't do that though when they're in a really heightened state, okay? You got to do that when there is a calm moment and we're not disengaged and the alarm bell is still ringing, because there's no way that you can engage the problem solving part. So this is why EFT is so good too, to calm it down first. So when you looked at all the different options, and ask them, which one would you want to try next time you're in that situation? What would you choose? and they choose one and they say, yep, great. And the green, if you imagine a traffic light, green means yes, you can go and you can do it. If they're not quite sure because it's something different, you can practice and role play it. Imagine doing it this way. What would it look like? What would it sound like? And that way they can try it out. And then check in with them whenever they were in that situation. How did it work out? Did it turn out good? If not, what could you then go back to the problem solving to start off with? What did you feel? What did other people feel? And again, come up with more options. There is no right or wrong. It's just a trial. And we try it this way. And sometimes this way might work one day, but the next day it might not. That's the beauty of life. And it's a really great way to let them know that this is a normal thing in life and this happens to all of us. And it is putting them in charge, for them to self-regulate, for them to become aware, well, what is it that I'm feeling? Always come back to that. What does my feeling tell me? What do I need? And how can I care for that need is the most important part. Okay, this is in a bit more detail. So when we have the problem, it's a sort of behavior management. We want to involve them in it too. So if we have a problem with them not cleaning up their room or whatever it is that we're dealing with, we look and listen, we clarify the problem with the child, and we express how we feel. I feel really angry because I'm trying to do the vacuuming and all this stuff is on the floor and I can't do it. And then come up with things together. What can we do to solve that problem? Because if we engage our children in that way, it's much more likely that they will be helpful. We put them in charge of the solution as well. So we're not just telling them, you clean up that room, but we're doing it together. We come up with different solutions and we can say, well, this might work, or we can tell them, well, for me, this doesn't work because, and we come up with a solution that works for everybody, and then implement it and do it, and we'll trial it and we see what happens. Okay. And what can you do to support their learning? Because it is really a learning curve for children. Accept your child as a learner. They haven't got it all yet with how to deal with their emotions and their social things. Provide them with opportunities to practice. Like I said, talking about different things in their lives or emotions altogether. Did something like that happen to you before? What could you do in that scenario? And shine your focus on to the good things. So when things are really going well, catch them when they do great things and when they're happy and pleased, to make them aware of, oh, what is it? When I do this, I feel really good. That helps them too to have that skill, and give them that positive feedback is a really great thing to support them in their learning. And the most important one is to model those strategies. I might skip those ones. It's this one is about, imagine if somebody tells you off with your parking, and it wouldn't help you very much to learn those skills if they have a go at you, and you should do it this way and you should do it that way. So just remember, your children are always in the situation of being a learner driver. Learners in everything. They can't do the things as well as we do yet, but they are learning, and they will get these skills when they're given encouragement for their efforts, rather than being criticized for what they don't do well or for what they can't do yet. So supporting them with their emotions, and won't go into that either. I wanted to show you there are plenty of tapping books about as well. There's this one is about the night monsters, which is a lovely book. There's some for teenagers down at the bottom, and the one on the right there is about children that are in hospital a lot and with their scared feelings of needles and things. So that's fantastic. And if you do have any questions that I don't get to, here is my email address, and you can email me those questions and I'd be happy to get back to you. Or if you want those tapping points and that sequence of how to do it, I can send it to you too. So it's been really fun. I could go on with this topic for over and over, and it's really, yeah, not over and over, but I have got so much to share that I could go on for forever with this topic. Okay. Oh, I just got a message there. I think the video has taken over the speaker as I cannot hear you. Uh-oh. All right. I want to wrap it up with that. So what we covered was deal with your own issues first and your own feelings. Really tune into what's going on for yourself. Number one. Trust that your children will be okay. Now that is, I've got the benefit of life experience with so many children that yes, they will survive and they learn those skills along the way, and they have different phases. I know a toddler's phase is very difficult to deal with at times. Sometimes teenage stage can be very tricky, but again, tune in. How am I feeling? How is it affecting me? And once we can acknowledge that, we can be a much better parent and can help them with our energies, that calmness that can flow over to them. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you very much for being here.